Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mainstream Indie Music channel. That's right, we are recording on my day off, but it does feel good to sleep in, I can't lie. This week on this channel, typically, we do report on a lot of bands around the turn of the century, a lot of the bands from the early 2000s, but every once in a while, we will dive into music history. And that is what we are doing this week. In fact, this has been a band that I've wanted to talk about for a while. I can't lie, I got a little biased towards Squeeze. Squeeze is definitely just like my David Byrne video. I was raised on the Beatles, I was raised on the Talking Heads, and I was raised on Squeeze. I heard their greatest hits album so many times, it's ridiculous. And it's funny because I went a period of time not listening to them. You know, it's almost like I was raised on them, and then as a teenager and in my early 20s, I kind of stopped listening to them. And then recently, probably just in doing research for this channel, I've looked back at their catalog and kind of said to myself, man, were these guys good. In fact, I'm not the only person that thinks that way, because the songwriting duo of Squeeze, which I'll get to in a moment, they were at one time, they were dubbed as the next Lennon-McCartney. And yes, I mean, I wouldn't say it in regards to like vocal talent or musicianship, but specifically in their songwriting. Because these South Londoners, what they did was what many famous bands do. They catch the attention of their audience by writing about things that the audience cares about and can relate to. You know, they're not so disconnected and lost in their own world that they kind of lose touch with what the modern man is going through. They wrote music for that modern man, and they wrote it artistically. They wrote it awesomely, beautifully, because what came out of it were such songs as Tempted, such songs as Up the Junction, and my personal favorite, Black Coffee in Bed. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. We're not going to do a massive jump into their history. Rather, what we're going to do this week is we're going to talk about how they left their mark on alternative music and kind of set the stage up for later bands, and kind of a brief summary of what happened to Squeeze over time. That and more. Stay tuned, guys. Squeeze was formed in the early 70s by songwriting duo that has pretty much become the staple of the group, Glenn and Chris. They just consistently have been there. In a little bit, we're going to talk about, what happened to Squeeze. And they eventually became a band of sadly revolving doors of band members. Especially after, Squeeze have actually broken up multiple times as a group, but really after that first time, I think is what did the most damage, and they couldn't really shake losing that original lineup. But again, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. And so they were formed in South England, and Chris and Glenn just wrote these songs, like I mentioned, that really just summarized the working man, something that people could relate to. And after kind of touring and getting their feet underneath them, it was in 1979 when they came out with their famous album, Cool for Cats. On that album was the song Up the Junction, which is also one of my favorite Squeeze songs. And it's interesting because Up the Junction itself, which maybe we'll do a deep dive into one day, is a song that, it doesn't have a chorus, which especially was weird for songs back in the 60s and 70s. I mean, it did happen, but the majority of the time, popular songs had choruses. But rather, it was made popular by its songwriting strength. It told the story of a couple that just eventually, over time, fell out of love. They started like everybody did. They fell in love. They bought a house together. They started working, living life together, and just gradually they started to drift apart until by the very end of the song, the main character of the song is left standing alone in his apartment, kind of coming to terms with the breakup and seeing how it happened and how he's up the junction, just like the song said. So that song catapulted them into popularity, and it really led into their breakout album Next. Just a few years later, in 1981, they came out with the album East Side Story. And what's interesting in it is Elvis Costello was the producer of that album. And on that album came their most famous song to date, Tempted. Now, what's funny is, in Tempted, neither Chris nor Glenn are the vocalists for that song. In fact, a lot of people kind of noticed, I mean, let's be real here. Tempted is the song 9 times out of 10 that people know, or you use that song to introduce people to Squeeze. And what's funny is, when they hear it and then they start listening to other Squeeze songs, they're like, this isn't the same guy, you know, like who is this guy, or where did this guy go? You know, this isn't the person that I hear singing on all their other songs, and you would be correct. Paul Carrack, which was really their studio keyboardist at the time, was chosen by Elvis Costello himself to sing the song Tempted, even though Glenn Tilbrook was pretty much always their lead singer at the time. And what's funny is, looking back at it now, Glenn says that he definitely tried to hide his hurt feelings not being selected to sing that song. But when it was done, when this whole song was produced and done, they just listened to it and just thought, my God, this song is gold and it is going to be amazing. And nowadays, it is pretty much all of their favorite song of the band. You know, they love it. It's their number one song that they love to sing. It's not a Radiohead situation where they despise their most famous song. They absolutely love how it turned out. So combining all of those things, combining really enjoying moderate success but not massive success, by continuing to write songs for the common man, songs that everybody can listen to and enjoy no matter where you are, not really losing touch with their roots, Squeeze remains really one of the beginning parts of alternative music. Later on, when Squeeze eventually started to have these long breaks and stretches, with Chris and Glenn even doing solo work together, Jules Holland was brought in, and then they went through about 2 to 3 different band incarcerations. Like I said earlier, it was kind of just a revolving door of musicians. However, looking back at it, their history, Squeeze has little to no regrets. They love where they're at, they love their fans, and they just want to keep playing music. Can't hate them for that.